Hello everyone, this is Shailesh. I'm going to record this video in which I'm going to do a reading passage of IELTS General. I've been requested by Garima uh, to go through this passage. Now, she has been struggling a little bit with this passage, and when I looked at her answers, I realized that it's not so much because of the passage, but she has a few um, deficiencies in her approach. So what I intend to do in this video is to sort of walk through how I would approach this essay, or rather how everyone should approach this essay, and there is a particular method that everyone needs to follow. Once you have that, I'm sure you will get a very high score on passages like this. In fact, this is a very typical IELTS passage, and I ended up getting all of them right. So there is a particular approach that you need to employ, and that should be the aim of this video for you. So let's first go through the essay. I'll give you some time. If you want, you can pause the video and read the essay if you haven't seen this essay anywhere. Alright, so let's quickly recap the essay. So it's about a particular stamp. It's called the penny black stamp, and how it was introduced, what was the impact of that on the postal system, etc. So it's a very general purpose kind of an essay, nothing too technical, right? Let's quickly go through each and every paragraph. I'll not be reading because that's going to take way too long. Okay, so first paragraph is more like an introduction. The second paragraph is talking about uh, how the postal system, how the stamp thing was before 1840. Then the third paragraph talks about this guy Roland Hill and how he came up with the idea. And there's also this person called Lord Lynchfield who wasn't very impressed with the idea, but he had to allow implementation of the penny black. So then it the passage goes on to talk about how the creatives were designed. They use a portrait of Queen Victoria, uh, and how it was printed and things like that. Then basically it talks about what was the impact on the postal system because of this stamp. It also talks about the opinions of this person, Mr. Hunt, and what he looked at this stamp as, whether it was a success or a failure. Then it talks about the penny post also changed the nature of the letter. So what were some other impacts on the postal system? And it concludes by saying that it was technically a failure. So that's basically what this passage is. Now what we need to do first is we need to understand what each and every paragraph is about, right? So I just read out sort of the structure of the paragraph, but you need to be very careful when you read each and every paragraph. So the way to do that is you read the first and the last lines of the each and every paragraph, right? So for example, this one, for all these billions the penny black was technically a failure. Okay, so what is going to follow in this paragraph is going to be some points related to the failure. Same thing here, the penny post was also changed the nature of the later. Okay, now how that is going to follow in this paragraph, right? So that is what in fact I've been doing when I summarize the passage. If you want, you can just go back and just do this exercise for yourself. Read the introduction, read the first line of the passage, sometimes the last line also, but most important thing is the first line. And just try to see how all these first lines are connected. So you'll automatically get the structure. And don't try to remember too much information in the first go, because that's not expected, that's not possible also, right? So don't stress yourself, just try to get sort of a structure. So when you have some idea of the passage, you will know that okay, the third paragraph or somewhere in the middle it talks about XYZ, and when there is a question based on that, you can just come back to that paragraph and then read it further for specific details. Okay, so now with this approach, yeah, just before we move on, another thing, if you want, you can also take notes, definitely on the essay, right, on the actual text. So for example, you want to highlight name of a person, let's say, right? So you want to talk about this person, okay, Lord Lynchfield. You can just maybe take some note here or highlight or whatever works with you. Okay, but on top of that, you can also sort of, you know, create a flow chart kind of a thing, maybe a graph of the essay, something like that. You know, however it works with you, just to show the flow. You know, so you don't have to remember too much information. Okay, fine. So let's move on to the questions directly because that's the most important part. All right, so I have the questions here. So let's go through the first one. One of the characteristics of the postal service before 1840 was that. Okay, now the keyword here is before 1840. Okay, so what does this tell you? It tells you that okay, we have to look for the paragraph slash paragraphs where they're talking about what used to happen before this penny black was introduced. Okay, so where do we have that? That's right in the beginning, right? Okay, so that's right here. Okay, so what we will do is we'll read this paragraph closely. Okay, but it will help if you go through these answers as you read the passage. Okay, so let's go through this. Postmen were employed by various organizations. Is this given in the passage? That is the question we have to answer. Okay, uh, I don't think there is anything given related to postmen, so this is not true. Okay, so let's cross this out. Okay, letters were restricted to a certain length. Okay, now this is an option that has been touched upon in the passage. Okay, but now let's look at this very carefully. Letters were restricted to a certain length. Okay, now it says letter writers employed various ruses to reduce the cost, doing everything possible to cram more words into one page. Okay, no one bothered with heavy envelopes. Okay, so what was happening was because the stamps and everything was very costly, it was based on distances and everything. People really didn't want to uh, send big envelopes and write multiple pages. They would just writing in small handwriting so that their cost would be low, right? But does that mean that the letters were restricted to a certain length? There any restriction by the postal guys saying that okay, you cannot send more than two pages? No, that is not true, right? So you need to be very careful. I think Garima had chosen this option, so no, this is not correct. You need to pay attention to each and every word. So it was not restricted. Yes, people preferred sending one pagers, right? But it was not a restriction. So this is not correct. Distance affected the price of postage. Yes, this is correct. This is given here directly. Delivery was charged according to the miles traveled, right? So explicitly given. So this is correct. Okay, let's keep on reading. The price of delivery kept going up. Okay, the price of delivery was high, yes, but it does not say anywhere that it kept going up, right? So if you're just going to read price and up, then you're going to take this option as correct, or maybe you'll get confused whether it is C or D. So you have to be very careful. So this is the price of delivery kept going up. There is no kept going up thing mentioned here, so this is not correct. So answer here is C. Okay, now that we have gone through the first question, now I want you to look at the approach. Okay, and this is basically the crux of this video. The the approach here is that it's called answering by elimination, or process of elimination. You can call it anything, but basically it is elimination. What are we eliminating? We are eliminating three wrong answers, right? And we are selecting one correct answer. So it is very much important on all IELTS questions, or for that matter anything, any standardized test where you have multiple choices. It's very important to eliminate the wrong choices and select the correct choice. Now look at it this way. Let's say if an answer of a question is A and B, C, D are wrong. Okay, so if you answer, let's say, a wrong answer, you say you choose D instead of A. What are you doing? You're doing two mistakes. You are first of all thinking that D is the correct answer, right, which is wrong. you're also thinking that A is not the correct answer, which is also wrong, right? So basically what the test writers, what do they want? They want you to eliminate the wrong answers and select only the correct one. If you do that, you are sort of double checking your answer. Sometimes, in the first go itself, you know that fine, I know this is the answer, but it is still important to eliminate the other options. Okay, and how do you do that? You do that by verifying that the correct answer, say for example in this case, distance affected by the price of postage, this is explicitly stated somewhere in the passage, right? So delivery was charged according to the miles traveled. When I read this, okay, I get convinced that okay, this is the correct answer, right? Okay, now how do I eliminate the wrong answers? I eliminate the wrong answers by making sure that they are not stated anywhere. So that's sort of a longer process. You will not find a particular place, a particular line, a few words where you will get the answer. You will have to go through the entire mm, paragraph or passage, right? Sometimes passage also, because not everything can be spotted into one specific paragraph all the time, right? But here in this case, this is easier. Letters were restricted to certain length is mentioned here, but it is not talking about any restriction, so that is wrong. So this is sort of the reading habit that you have to develop. Okay, so let's see how this approach goes into other questions also. Okay, letter writers in the 1830s were not responsible for the cost of delivery. Okay, is that true? Yes, because it said, mm, okay, it was the recipient who had to pay for the postage. Right, so the letter sender or letter writer was not responsible. So this is correct. Okay, let's still keep on reading. Okay, try to fit more than one letter into one envelope. No, it is saying no one bothered with heavy envelopes, right? Okay, but it does not say that he tried to fit more than one letter into an envelope. Okay, don't get confused. It is trying to put more than one pages into one envelope. So this is not correct. Could only send letters to people living in cities. No, it doesn't say that. It talks about cities and rural areas. Okay, where does it talk about that? Okay, right. So it says, and hope your addressee didn't live in one of the several rural areas that were not served. But there were some rural areas that were served. It doesn't say anything explicitly that okay, it was only for cities. No rural areas served. It doesn't say that. So this is not correct. Knew all letters were automatically read by postal staff. Okay, what does it talk about postal staff reading the letters? Okay, hmm. Okay, sent. It says your letter would arrive without being read or censored. Okay, so it is saying that yes, it was expensive to send letters. Sometimes it took longer time. Some areas were not served, but your letter would reach without being read or censored. That means postal guys were not reading letters, right? So automatically read by postal staff is wrong. So correct answer here is A. Okay, so let's move on. What does the text say about Hill in 1830s? He was the first person to express the concern about postal system. Okay, first of all, where does it talk about Hill? It talks about Hill in somewhere in this part, right? This is more about Hill. This is more about the proposal. Okay, so what does it say? Roland Hill, an inventor, teacher, and social reformer for Kidderminster, who proposed a workable plan. Okay, fine. But it doesn't say anything about the first person to express concern over the postal system. So that's not correct. It says he considered it would be more efficient for mail to be delivered by rail. Okay. It talks about mail and rail, but it doesn't necessarily establish this connection. He considered it to be more efficient for mail to be delivered by rail. So he's not talking about railway being used as a means of delivery. Right? He's only saying that there is a second revolution coming in, and that's why it is important to expedite mail. Okay, so this is also not correct. Okay, he felt that a postal service reform was necessary for commercial development. Exactly. Now he said, worried that a dysfunctional, costly service would stifle communication, Just as Britain was in swing of a second industrial revolution, he believed reform would ease the distribution of ideas and stimulate trade and business. So stimulate trade and business is basically commercial development, right? So this is correct. His plan received support from all important figures of the day. Actually, this is wrong, right? Because this paragraph talks about this Lord Lichfield, who was not in favor of this project, right? So correct answer here is C. Okay, let's move on with this question. Fine. Now this is a particular type of question where they are asking you to match A, B, C, D to specific questions. Okay. Now the best way to do this question is to find out what is happening with these guys, because it is easy to find these keywords rather than these keywords, right? Okay, so we'll just write it. Okay, what is mentioned about this person? What is mentioned about this person? That we will write in front of each name, and we'll just be mindful of these options. That okay, fine. When we are reading about Hill or Litchfield or whoever, I'm just going to look for inspiration or spread of information and things like that. Okay. Now, one thing you have to be very careful about is whether it allows duplicate answers. So here is the note. Now, this is not always true. So if there are four questions and you have to do matching A, B, C, D, then in most cases it is exclusive mapping. So you cannot use one option more than once, right? But here it says you may use any letter more than once. Okay, so it is possible that both 31, let's say 31, 32, 33, 34, any number of those could be pointing only to one person. All these four persons don't have to be mentioned in 31, 32, 33, 34. It is possible. Okay, so let's just keep that in mind. Okay, so let's talk about what is mentioned about Roland Hill. See, he was an inventor, teacher. He proposed the idea. He thought that uh, distribution of ideas is more important for trade, and he proposed the idea, etc., etc. Okay, and then it talks about Lord Lichfield, who basically did not like the idea. Okay, so Roland Hill, his inspiration came from a particular picture. No, that is not true. We are still not talking about any picture. He claimed that the postal system would lead to a spread of information. Okay, correct. So that is Roland Hill. He claimed that a postal system would lead to spread of information, right? So this is Roland Hill is going to be answer for 32. Okay, he organized the creation of the first stamp. No, we are still discussing about the idea. Okay, he expressed doubts about the plans to change the postal service. So this is Lord Lichfield, right? He's saying who was not convinced of the need of poor people to post anything. He was not very much in favor of this idea. So 34B. Okay. Uh, Now what we are left with is, see, once we sort of answered a few of these choices, it becomes much easier. We only have to focus about two ideas now. So what do we have to focus on? We have to focus on 33. We have to focus on 31. His inspiration came from a particular picture. Okay, so where is any particular picture mentioned here? This picture is about this, no? Queen Victoria, right? So who was this guy? He was the uh, this Mr. Cheverton, who was a sculptor, determined that a portrait of Queen Victoria could be used for this picture, etc. So Mr. Cheverton is the inspiration, is the one who took inspiration from this picture. So this 31 is C. Okay, all right. And now we are only left with this. He organized the creation of the first stamp. So who organized the creation of the first stamp? It was definitely not Litchfield, right? Was it Cheverton? No, he was just a sculptor, a designer, maybe. Okay, Trisham Hunt. Now, who's Trisham Hunt? Trisham Hunt is mentioned somewhere here. Who is an historian who values the flourishing of correspondence while I was writing my biography, etc. Okay, he's who is probably someone who came into the picture much later because he's a historian, right? So he's not the one who drove the idea. He's not the one who organized the creation of the first stamp, right? That's not correct. So what we are left with, although this is sort of repetitive, uh, because we have already chosen A for 32. but answer for 33 is also A, because they have not given any more information as to who actually did the project. So, we can, based on the information given, it is evident that only Roland Hill was the one who was, who organized the whole idea and also executed it. Choose no more than two words from the passage. Okay. Design came about as a result of a competition organized by dash. Okay. So where is the design? We are talking about the design here. Okay, fine. The idea stuck, and in August 1839, the Treasury launched a design competition. Okay, so the answer here is Treasury. Okay, I'm just writing here in short, Treasury. Okay, based on an engraving of Queen Victoria featured on a dash. Okay, so let's read this part particularly. Okay, because this is not an easy question. Okay, the new stamp would need to be resistant to forgery, and so it was a submission by one Mr. Cheverton that Hill used as the basis for one of the most striking designs in history. Cheverton, who worked as a sculptor and engineer, determined that a portrait of Queen Victoria engraved for a commemorative coin where she was 15-year-old princess was detailed enough to make copying difficult and recognizable enough to make fake easy to spot. Okay, so the Cheverton guy, he is using a portrait of Queen Victoria which was already there on a commemorative coin, and he's saying that okay, this portrait is detailed enough so that it cannot be copied, and if copied it would be easy to spot. Okay, so that's all there is on this portrait thing. Okay, so now let's read the question again. Based on an engraving of Queen Victoria feature on, so where was this engraving? So it was engraved on a commemorative coin. So the answer here is commemorative coin. Just writing in short here, commemorative coin. Okay, now another thing here is no more than two words, right? So some of these answers are going to be two words. Just note that sometimes it says one word, so then you can just put coin. Apart from the queen's face, the stamp had just three words and pictures of dash as decoration. Okay, so what does it say? The word postage and one penny, okay, these are the three words, were added alongside flourishes and ornamental stars. Okay. So what does it say? What's the question? Apart from the queen's face, the stamp had just three letters. Yeah, we know that, postage and one penny, and pictures of dash as decoration. Okay. Now the idea here, the key word here is decoration and ornamental. Right. So what was used as uh, for decoration? Ornamental stars. Ornamental stars. So you know the stars that are usually in old pictures. You have the stars and everything behind people's faces. That kind of stuff. Okay. Fine. No mention of dash as plan was for stamps to be for domestic use only. Okay, so where does it talk about that? No mention of something. Now see, questions like these are sort of difficult to interpret. So no mention of what? I don't know, right? No mention of what as plan was for stamps for domestic use only. So then the idea here is to spot a keyword domestic use. Where is domestic use mentioned? Okay, so it says nobody thought to add the word Britain as it was assumed that the stamps would solely be for domestic use. Okay, so they are saying okay, it's going to be only in England, so why to add the word Britain? Okay, with this information, when you read this back, no mention of, okay, no mention of Britain, right? As plan was for stamps for to be only for domestic use. Okay, you can either write Britain or the word Britain. Okay, because it says more than two words, I would say word Britain. Okay, the dash which was applied to indicate that the stamp had been used proved to be ineffective. Okay, so what are some of the problems with the stamp? I think the problems are mentioned here. Hmm. Okay, it's probably mentioned in the last one. Yeah, it is talking about uh, yeah, it's talking about technical failure. The post offices used red ink to cancel stamps so that it could not be used again, but the ink could be removed. Okay. Okay, so the problem is with the red ink. So it says the dash which was applied to indicate the stamp had been used. Yes, answer is red ink. Red ink that was applied when the stamp had been used proved to be ineffective. Okay. In 1842, The dash of the stamp was changed. The price, size, what? 1842 is mentioned here, only here actually in the whole paragraph. Okay. When in 1840 it was determined that black ink would be more robust, the color of the penny black becomes sort of a browny red, but Hill's brainchild had made similar. Okay, so what changed from black to brown or browny red, whatever? Okay, so it's the color. Okay, COLOR. Okay, now you can either write color or COLOUR, whatever spelling you write, British American. Just stick to that throughout your, not just this passage, throughout your IELTS. Just be mindful of that. Okay, fine. So we'll see that we were able to do all these questions, right? And you'll also note that if you just go through this, you'll realize that not all these paragraphs are of equal importance. I mean, there's a lot of questions on the first paragraph, two questions, end to end. Last two questions came only from these last four lines, right? There was really nothing much, in this part of the passage, this part of the, we didn't even read it actually, while solving the question, right? But yes, we don't know. I mean, it just depends where the questions are coming from. Sometimes the questions are equally spaced, throughout the passage. It doesn't really matter, so long as you understand where to look for what, you know. Fine. So what I want uh, everyone to take away from this is understand, how to approach an RC, right? Read it once, sort of take notes, understand the flow structure. Okay, make highlights if you want, right? Then go through each and every question, use process of elimination to strike out all the wrong answers, make sure that those wrong answers are actually wrong, make sure the correct answer is actually correct. Most of the times you will be able to pinpoint on a particular sentence or a particular line saying that okay, this is where the correct answer lies. So when you do that, your confidence level will be higher, right? So I hope this video was helpful, and if you have any more requests, please let me know. Thank you.